Good afternoon, everyone. I see people are joining in. Welcome to yet another session of this 3-day leadership workshop. Um, we're just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to join in, and then we do proceed. Do indicate in the chat box where you're connecting from. I'm just going to type in so that you see how we want you to notify us where you're connecting from. Obriel connecting from Mafikeng, and there we go in the chat box. So do tell us where you're connecting from. Welcome to all our attendees. Welcome. We welcome you to yet another amazing session. So this is the 5th session of the day, and I hope everyone has been attending the earlier sessions. We had amazing speakers, but even if you didn't attend, you have the opportunity to go through those sessions. They're going to be on YouTube, on the Golden Key Southern African YouTube account. And then if you're a Golden Key member as well, you do have access to these videos through the Golden Key Academy as well. They're going to be archived there. So awesome. You definitely get to listen and to hear what other speakers were saying. So the session that just ended now that we had from 2 o'clock, it was on emotional intelligence. And to follow it up, I think it's perfect that we're going to be discussing now about group dynamics and conflict resolution, as well as a little bit of emotional intelligence. I believe our presenter, or rather our guest speaker, will also add on emotional intelligence, particularly in group dynamics. So I'm going to describe what this session is meant to do, but as well as dive into the bio of our speaker. So welcome. I see we do have people connecting from Eastern Cape, Jonita from Eastern Cape, Tembeka connecting from Pietermaritzburg. We've got Vanessa. Oh, okay, Vanessa, our guest speaker from, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is that Ilovo? Or yeah, yes, perfect. And then Risejo from Mafikeng. Amazing. Jana from Cape Town. Brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. So let me not waste too much time. So this session, it focuses on the fact that effective leaders must possess several key leadership skills. And one of them is the ability, or rather is the most crucial one, which is the ability to manage team conflicts, the ability to recognize the conflict and understand the nature of conflict, and the ability to do so in a very, very fair manner, and also with a consciousness of the group's emotions as well. So for this session, we've got an amazing speaker. We've got Vanessa from Holland. Vanessa has recently been appointed as executive head of people at Holland. She has an instinctive interest in understanding of human rights that has carved a career spanning over 10 years in various aspects of human resources. She holds an undergrad qualification in human resources, majoring in industrial psychology from the University of Johannesburg, UJ as we know it, and a postgraduate qualification in business management. Vanessa has led various teams across multiple disciplines, including team management, talent acquisition, leadership development from graduates to executive teams, organizational effectiveness, and transformation. She brings passion and an ability to drive high-performing human-centric teams with a focus on the employee experience. Vanessa says she'll take anyone on at karaoke, so anyone in there to challenge her in the attendees section, please do drop a comment there to go on head-to-head with Vanessa on karaoke. And yeah, Vanessa says she enjoys eating whatever government meals her partner thinks up for her. And her stepson as well, while he's unapologetically bringing on the crime channel and a multitude of self-help books, as well as personal mastery courses. Amazing, amazing. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to hand over to Vanessa. Put your seatbelts on and let's enjoy the session. Thank you.
Wow, Rio, thank you. Goodness gracious. You should be at the beginning of all my talks. So guys, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I actually am a Golden Key alumni myself. So it's really cool. It feels like I'm going back to many years ago when I was a student myself. You know, the thing is, I love engaging with students. I love having chats and conversations and discussions and things like that. And COVID obviously has made this quite challenging from an interactive perspective. And in fact, right now, I think the Zoom piece just completely took out the entire page. I'm only seeing the, what's this? I'm only seeing the presentation. So, and I won't be able to see some of your chats, unfortunately, but I think as much as we can make it interactive, maybe even at the end, we'll be able to chat and delve in a little deeper into this conversation. So I was contacted by Obriel a couple of weeks ago, I think, and you know, said you're going to come and talk to our Golden Key students, and I was like, this is fantastic, and it's leadership. I'm like, great. And then he says to me a couple of, I think, emails later, we'd like you to talk about conflict. And I just thought to myself, really, of all the things I get to, I'm the one who's going to talk about conflict. So can you see already the conflict avoidance sort of growing and festering inside of me. And I actually thought to myself, this was really wonderful, because I think the initial response to conflict generally is people being very afraid of it, or not wanting to engage in it, wanting to avoid, or there's some that are just happy to be in conflict almost about everything at every moment, right? So I've sort of titled today's conversation, Giving Conflict a Facelift, because I think that we can reposition it a little bit and show you a different perspective as growing leaders, right? Around conflict and how you can make it your friend, how you can make conflict a gift. And this is something that I think we're all very familiar with. Conflict is something that is part and parcel of our lives, personally and otherwise. And so sort of to kick things off, I want to sort of share a personal thing that's just happened recently. I like telling stories, guys. So do think of who you are in this situation. So my partner and I love to go out quite often. And we find these little places where like they really make good food. And, you know, it's date night and we're excited and we get there and then we have this wonderful waitress. We'll call her Linda. Linda introduces herself, she takes our drinks orders, and, you know, we realize, it's taking a little long for Linda to bring back our drinks. So I'm thinking maybe I'm typically like an A-type, quite impatient. My partner on the other side is very relaxed, right? But we're realizing the cocktail is taking some time to come around. And then some time goes and eventually the cocktail makes its way back. And then now we're ordering our food. Again, just 15 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by. I am getting irritable in my date night, and my partner's trying to diffuse the situation. I'm going, but what is going on? Where does she go? The restaurant is so empty. What is the issue here? Right? And that essentially just was the experience throughout the time we'd gone out. I then am a big fan of sort of giving feedback so that, you know, we can improve and get better. And I didn't want to sort of say, look, you know, we didn't have the best experience today. You were sort of disappearing. My partner goes, you know what, let's just go to the till, because at the time we needed to get the bill. Linda also was, you know, sort of MIA, nowhere to be found. So we make our way to the front desk to go pay for the bill. Linda then comes through. And my partner says, no, sorry, Shane, we're in a hurry. We need to go. And I'm thinking, no, this is an opportunity to get in there and to say, you know, we didn't have a great experience because we're waiting for you the whole time. So I just sort of explained that because there's two different ways in which people sort of respond to conflict, right? There's fight and flight. So very much a very normal example of us dealing with something like that. In sort of trying to still paint the picture, because, right, we need help in understanding what conflict is, as if. I thought I would show a video from one of my favorite sitcoms, The Office. And again, you know, are you Stanley? Are you Toby? Are you the boss? Or are you the guy sort of watching on thinking, what on God's green earth? Let's take a look.
Everybody, so how are we going to energize our office? Stanley, you want to help us out with that? Stanley, Eartha Stanley.
Not me.
Yes, you. Come on, Stanley, put your little game down and join the group.
No.
Stanley, we're having a little
Leave me alone, damn it.
We're having a brainstorm session.
Did I stutter?
Can I talk to you a second?
Oh, what?
I really think that you need to address what happened with Stanley this morning.
What are you blabbering about? Nothing happened.
Well, you know, Stanley was openly insubordinate.
That in the conference room?
Yeah.
We were joshing around, the two of us, and he said, did I stutter? And I said, whoa, 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 what, dog? I was joking. Okay, everybody, shh. What's up? Earlier today, Stanley sassed me, and Toby gave me some suggestions on how to discipline him. They did not work, obviously, because they were stupid. So I am now going to fake fire him. Just what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that I'm firing him, and I need you to act like I am firing him. Do you get that? Do you get it? I'm teaching him a lesson. He needs to learn humility, all right? That's all I'm... Okay, here he comes. Let's just play act. Stanley, may I talk to you for a second? Stanley Hudson, you are fired.
Are you serious?
I am serious. We are all serious. You are fired like a heart attack.
You're firing me over 3 words.
Yes.
Have you lost your mind? Do you think I'm gonna let you do this to me? I've watched you screw up this office for 10 years, and I'm filing a lawsuit, and I'm gonna tell them about every stupid thing you've ever done up in this office.
All right, okay. You know what? Now you know how I feel. This was a fake firing. Lesson learned. Good work, everybody. Very nice.
So I'm not fired.
That's it. And, do you have anything to say to me?
Oh, yes, I do. You are out of your damn little pea-sized mind. What is wrong with you? Do you have any sense at all?
Okay.
Do you have any idea how to run an office?
Yes.
Every day you do something stupider than you did the day before. And I think there's no possible way he can top that.
Okay.
But what do? You find a way, damn it, to top it. You are a professional idiot.
Hey, stop it! Okay, everybody out.
Who?
Yeah, everybody, except Stanley. I don't understand why you keep picking on me.
Oh, for the love of God.
I just do, and I don't know why. So please help me understand.
Fine. Here it is. You are a person I do not respect. The things you say, your actions, your methods and style, everything you would do, I would do it the opposite way.
Well, Stanley, maybe you are feeling that you don't respect me because you don't know me very well.
Michael, I've known you a very long time. And the more I've gotten to know you, the less I've come to respect you. Any other theories?
All right, you don't respect me. I accept that. But listen to me. You can't talk to me that way in this office. You just can't. I am your boss. Can't allow it.
Fair enough.
I'm thinking, as a reward for our loyal
So guys, I mean, if that's just not the worst example there ever was of how conflict happens in the workplace, right? Yes, it provides some comical relief. Again, so sad. I'm talking to a screen and I can't necessarily see if anybody enjoyed that as much as I enjoy The Office. But there's some real responses that you see there. You know, we all know a Toby, we all know a Stanley. And what typically happens is that people get defensive, some people get aggressive, you know, people get passive, aggressive. There's all sorts of things that come out in conflict. And not only are they sort of present in work, what you find is that how you manage conflict, even in your personal life, is sort of how it permeates in the work environment too. So I really just wanted to show what, in a very satirical way, conflict sort of depicted on screen, but also the ability to sort of reflect on sort of what you see, who you relate to the most. If you've ever been in a situation like that, what does that bring up for you, right? So if we did have sort of a normal situation where we're facilitating, I'd be able to sort of get some answers around what you think and how you felt about that. Other people get very, very, very tense, very, very nervous. It becomes very uncomfortable even just to watch that, right? Other people, like I said, sort of want to go for it, you know, want to create that conflict in any which way. So conflict has a bad rep, right? It has a bad reputation. We don't see it necessarily in a positive light, and we don't necessarily want to experience it. And so when that is the case, you find that we don't necessarily always pull out all the juice that we can from a conflict situation and how it offers us, or what it offers us. But think about this again in your personal life, your relationships, your friendships, your family. Have you had lessons that you've learned in a conflict situation? In fact, you tend to learn more in difficult situations than you do in sort of very easy ones, right? And that's how sort of the world is created or designed, is that you get to develop, you get to cut your teeth, you pay your school fees through very challenging instances. So conflict, much like that, is the same. It operates in the same way. And so that's what I want to do today, is give you a different perspective as a leader of how you could benefit from conflict. In fact, a leader who sees conflict as an opportunity, right? As an opportunity to learn, as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to bring about awareness or self-awareness, an opportunity to understand your team, an opportunity for you to discover various areas in which you need to develop yourself. So the question that I ask is, can you guess what gift conflict presents you with? You know, I think I've given some hints there, but what gifts do conflict give you? But the thing is about that is that it's not a given that conflict will give you those gifts if you don't conflict well, right? So we're going to go into the how also later on in this discussion. So the big gift that conflict gives you is awareness. That's what conflict does. Again, think about your last fight with someone or your disagreement. What happened is that once you gained a curiosity about the other person's perspective, once you got to listen to what the other person was going through, once you got to perhaps even feel yourself in your body and how you're responding to that, what that gives you is awareness. And Aubrielle mentioned this, you know, sort of conscientizing, consciousness. That's what conflict is able to provide if a leader is able to sort of reach into it and make it work. So one of the aspects in which it impacts is culture. And I've put their values also because culture and values values drive culture, right? So it brings difficult issues to the surface. It encourages a healthy debate and argument. It improves relationships amongst people. How will we be able to ventilate what are some of the different opinions and what are some of the difficulties if people just did not authentically conflict? And so there is some real gems that come from that as a leader, and understanding sort of a little bit, deeper under the line, sort of the iceberg theory, what is going on in the team, is you usually get that through conflict, which impacts on culture. Second, I've put your remuneration and reward. Conflict, interestingly, increases productivity. There is some, some observations that were made in an airline in Asia, and I can't remember the country right now, but what they observed is that this airline was having a lot of plane crashes. And in this sort of the culture is that they observed hierarchies quite well. And you'd have the younger pilots or the co-pilots not wanting to create conflict when they would see danger or they would see something that's about to happen. And they would just keep quiet because they wanted to keep the peace, right? For them, it's if I get into a conflict situation here, I'd rather sort of maintain the peace. I'd rather maintain sort of respect as opposed to do that. And what would happen is that there would be actual plane crashes or fatalities because there was this conflict aversion that really had very difficult and challenging outcomes. So conflict, yes, does increase productivity. Again, if you're able to conflict well, which we'll go into in a moment. There are financial benefits also, which are tied to performance. And I don't think you ever thought that you could say conflict actually will bring about a better bottom line in an organization. Absolutely. Again, let's personalize this. If you had a partner in a group project, or you have a business idea, and your intention was for having consensus all the time, your intention was to make sure that everything was going okay, how costly would that relationship be with that individual if there was an aversion of conflict at all costs? Growth and development. Conflict allows change to happen faster. It allows your team to work towards its goals. And I'm someone who have, as Abra mentioned earlier, I've led multiple teams. And I've really found that as I've grown as a leader, the quicker one gets into the conflict, the quicker one sort of ventilates the conflict, and the healthier you are around conflict as a manager, you're able to really use that as a tool for gaining insights on the direction of which to develop and where to grow. And then I've put your wellness. Wellness is a big topic at the moment. We're thinking about working in a post-pandemic world. People are sort of utilizing a lot of screen time, etc. There's a lot of pressure. We talk about mental illness, etc. Wellness really speaks to people's engagement with the role, with the job that they do, how they feel about that. And so wellness is really sort of motivated, is tied to motivation. Again, it's tied to discretionary effort, etc. Again, so improving relationships. People work a lot better when they have good relationships in their teams or in their companies. And again, we know this personally, that good relationships are formed across sort of having some challenging moments, understanding the person better and growing from that. And clarifies doubts and queries, removes stress and anxiety. Again, a sort of counter intuitive thing to think about. One would think, for me to not have anxiety and for me to not have stress, I'm going to avoid conflict at all costs. Whereas it's the avoidance of the conflict that creates those instances when that takes place. And then transformation, this is one of my favorite. I'm a transformative leader. If I can take something and improve it, that's where I want to be. So when we think about transformation, also from a diversity and inclusion, it brings about the ability to see things in a new way. If you're going to have diverse opinions, if you're going to have diverse people, diversity in age, in generation, in industry, in background, in studies, etc. The way that maybe someone in an engineering field will look at a problem to someone who comes from, for instance, a psychology background will be quite different. And that diversity in views is incredibly important to the richness of what the team can fulfill. So all of this brings about transparency. And that's what the awareness is. That's what conflict is. When you're in a team and you're leading a team, or again, I love to personalize things. If you're in a working environment or you're in a relationship with people, the more there is an aversion to conflict, there is a missed opportunity in a better understanding of where the person's coming from. There's a missed opportunity of what is going on in that environment, in that context. And so when you're a leader and you can manage this effectively, the information that comes with it, the consciousness that you learn, and the ability for yourself to manage conflict and your emotions is something that's really, really important. Because as long as there's people, you're going to have differences in opinion, you're going to have heightened emotions, you're going to have challenges, etc. And so the quicker that you're able to sort of really see this as something that you can benefit from, the better it is for you in your leadership journey. So it's the how, right? So it's like, okay, great, I can make conflict my friend and I can benefit from it. But what does that look like practically? What does that mean? And how can I sort of adapt that for myself and in my leadership journey as well as myself personally? So I have here conflict management, building blocks of emotional intelligence. So guys, you're going to see this as a theme. And I think this is why Aubriel mentioned this, because when we're discussing sort of tackling conflict, I said to him, you can't do that without touching on emotional intelligence. And I believe that that is a module in this leadership conference that has been designed for you. There is no understanding how to manage conflict without understanding how to build a competence around emotional intelligence. So I'm obviously not going to take another couple of minutes talking around emotional intelligence, because that's something that I think either you've already gone through or you will be attending to in this program. But emotional intelligence is your arsenal. Emotional intelligence is the place in which you go as a leader to deal with very challenging aspects of being a leader, or with being in an organization, or being a part of a team. And conflict is no different. Conflict requires for one to have a heightened self-awareness, right? If you have the ability to understand yourself, to understand your values, to understand sort of what matters to you, to understand how you respond when you're in a stressful situation, to understand how your body feels, to understand sort of what are some of the limiting responses or reactions that you have in a conflict situation. So self-awareness plays a pivotal role in how one navigates conflict. Empathy. Conflict does mean that there's another person on the other side of this, right? And what's great about emotional intelligence, guys, and this is part of, I think you would have touched this in your emotional intelligence talk, is that these are competencies that one can build. And you cannot be an effective conflict manager as a leader if you're not able to sort of put yourself in what the other person is going through, and to understand from their perspective how that situation is challenging them and from their viewpoint in their context, right? The motivation I've just described now. What are some of the benefits of what one can get from managing conflict well? But what is motivating what people are doing? What is the underlying why around sort of these actions? Is a person sort of feeling a lot of pressure? And so heightened pressure, an inability to do the job, for example, and sort of that creates an insecurity around themselves, and they show up in a way that perhaps creates a lot more conflict. They're less likely to collaborate, they're less likely to be more open. So what is the motivation behind the action and the behavior that you're witnessing? And so again, building around that context allows you as a leader to really show up in a very emotionally intelligent way in a situation, which will diffuse and have the ability to make the conflict be a lot more productive. Self-regulation. And there's so much work around mindfulness now, right? I think you guys are like sort of an up from my generation, where we were reading Eckhart Tolle and The Secret and all these things. And, there's a lot more conversation around the capacity for one to be able to manage their emotion. And guys, this is not to say that anger is wrong. It's not to say that being hurt is wrong. It's not to say that they're bad emotions. There's no such thing. All emotions matter. But what is very important is the ability to regulate for yourself in order for you to be able to show up in a way in a conflict situation that, again, is a healthy way to relate to it, as opposed to sort of letting it completely destroy. And then social skills, right? Again, listening actively, how we communicate. You know, we're finding ourselves again in a situation in COVID. I mean, I love having these conversations, but I can't see you guys. So that sort of takes out a bit of a social element to this. But social skills, and I think even more than ever, we need to sort of really overcompensate with the inaccess to people, with the inaccess to sort of having a coffee and sitting next to someone, being able to read their body language, being able to sort of see how something, how they respond to what you're saying. So the need to sort of build in that connection, and the need to sort of build in those elements in which you are engaging with another person and viewing that or responding to it is another piece that really feeds into an emotional intelligent leader. Okay, so emotional intelligence plays a big role. Obviously, I did try to touch on it very quickly. I'm not going to go into it extensively, but in this context, how it assists a leader in making conflict really useful. So I thought, I really am not a fan of teaching things with frameworks, but I did sort of want to flip this up just so that you guys can sort of look at it and sort of think to yourself, where do you lean on? Where do you find yourself sort of going to a lot? You know, if you're someone who is more around sort of consensus and wanting to keep the peace, you'll find that perhaps there is a skew towards wanting to be overly accommodating to the point at which you may build up resentment because you're not necessarily attending to what it is that you want, or being, passive around your conflict, not necessarily sharing how you really feel, really sort of wanting to keep the relationship in spite of sort of what it is that you need from it. And so down the line, those things really start to become real issues in how a person then navigates themselves within the team. And I think as a leader, it's very important to understand your team members and to understand yourself. If you do have team members that are just a little bit more assertive and, prize competing over everything, for example, and don't necessarily collaborate, are focused on sort of themselves in how and what they achieve, etc. You as a leader needs to understand that. And again, there's ways in which one can utilize everybody's sort of conflict modes to find a balance, right? Bringing it back to the middle. So having the right amount of assertiveness and having the right amount of cooperativeness in order to have a conflict awareness of how the team is, where it's generally sort of positioned. I used to be in an executive team where the leadership team, for example, so all the CEOs of the various companies were so fixated on consensus, right? You present something and you want to have a debate around it, but all of them just wanted to get along, and no one wanted to sort of say something that would not be aligned with one of their colleagues or their peers or their contemporaries. And that, you can imagine what that does to creativity. You can imagine what that does to sort of problem solving. You can imagine what that does to strategizing. So having a team that sort of leans one way or another, again, one might think, well, if one is just accommodating, this might work, but a leadership team that just wants to pursue consensus is not going to be very effective in managing what happens and the challenges that take place. As I mentioned already, creativity, curiosity, etc. So it's just good to just sort of plot yourself, think about yourself and sort of where you tend to lean, and what aspects of being assertive or being cooperative can one sort of bring into your style in order to sort of manage that balance. So I like to talk about growing through it. I think everybody knows sort of going through something, but I think for me as a leader and just as a personal mantra, I always think about anything that is challenging, anything that really sort of tests me is what I'm meant to grow through. So this is a Simon Sinek. I was hoping not to have a Simon Sinek quote, but here it is. Leadership is a practicable, learnable skill, guys. And I mean, we could go through a whole debate on nature versus nurture, etc. But the point is that anything that you give attention to, anything that you practice, and I wanted to put some very practical elements in which one could start to think about and practice so that you get into that habit of building this capacity of an emotionally intelligent leader who's able to be a lot more helpful in conflict situations. So I've put you conduct regular health indexes. So an organization, they will have like an organizational health index is when they send out a survey to all the employees and sort of gauge how they're responding to the organization from a development perspective, from a leadership perspective, from, you know, general people practices, etc. And you can do that also, or for instance, even utilizing 360-degree feedback. This will be able to sort of give you a compass, give you a map as to sort of where you need to go in what you need to develop. You can do that amongst, for instance, after you guys do a project, you can run a 360 evaluation on how you showed up, what you can do better, what are some of, you know, the blind spots that you may have, but your peers and your contemporaries could give you some insights on. So it's really good to get feedback, and particularly feedback from people that you're in conflict with regularly, right? Because again, when we have our CVs, we put references from all the people that really we got along with and that we really liked, but there's some gems and nuggets of information from people that really challenge us. So really solicit feedback, and that would really sort of help to direct your efforts, as I've mentioned. Build emotional awareness and self-control, building in a gap between feelings and how you respond. So again, this speaks into mindfulness. You know, one way in which to really sort of aid in this practice is meditation, for example. I've been struggling with meditation for years, but I keep trying. And that is really just to give you a presence and an ability to, again, have an awareness of what is going on. We all, as I mentioned, all feelings are valid. If you're angry, you're angry. But there is a gap. How do you start to build that gap between how you're feeling? How do you start to build some muscle around your impulse control and how you respond? And that's something, again, you know, you can practice this personally. You can practice it in your relationships. You can practice in the car. You can practice, you know, if you're someone who's sort of really, you know, at the mercy, sort of in how you respond at everything happening to you. It's a wonderful opportunity to build this competence for yourself. Openness and adaptability. See how rigid you are in terms of allowing new ideas to come in. I think a wonderful thing about being at university or in the world really is that you have an influx of opinions coming in at you the whole day. There's social media. How open are you to different views? How adaptable are you to someone who has completely different way of thinking? And I always say this, we've had different experiences, we have different parents, we've lived in different households. How in the world am I going to try and have you have the same view as I do? Absolutely not. And I don't have the ego to say that I'm the all-knowing, right? So an openness and adaptability really sort of helps a leader to manage in conflict situations, because again, you're open to wherever the people are coming from who are in that conflict situation, where you can lend a hand in managing that better. So defining solutions that the team endorses. Again, conflicts are an ability to sort of ventilate varying opinions, ventilate various ways of how we see the solution. In a consensus-driven environment, you're not going to necessarily get that. Supporting the team through difficult situations and personal and organizational awareness. Again, if you are a leader who has a team that comes to you as a leader and shares when they're in conflict, that's fantastic, because it means that, you know, you have the capacity to aid in how that conflict is dealt with, right? And so instead of sort of seeing that as, oh my goodness, this is something I don't want to be part of, it's got nothing to do with me. How do you bring about the emotional intelligence that you have as a leader to assist in making that conflict a healthy situation? And again, build your capacity, practice and invest in your personal mastery. All these things start in your own personal practices, in what you decide to do on an ongoing basis, and creating that awareness for yourself will really go a long way. Because by the time you're building this as Vanessa, as an individual, it really seeps into your leadership style, which then again, the team and the people around you can benefit from. So personal mastery is something that one should be investing in on a daily basis in your practices, what you read and what you feed yourself. So I really wanted to highlight that, building that capacity for yourself. So tap into your EQ to use emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. Make calm statements of fact, ask questions and listen. Try to understand the other person's point of view without judgment. Tell the facts as you see them and how they affect you, and explain the outcome you're hoping for, and ask for other ideas for solutions. So again, I wanted to bring it down to a very granular, tangible, practical level for yourself of how to even manage a conversation when utilizing emotional intelligence. And so if this is the only thing that you take away from this conversation, is how to, in each conflict situation that you're presented with, in each of them, if you can put a list for yourself, how do I feel? How am I responding? Am I looking at the facts? Am I describing how I'm feeling? Am I listening with curiosity, right? Have I taken enough time to understand what the other person is going through? So again, you'll see these pieces around EQ really coming out. And as I mentioned, if you do this in every conflict situation that you're in, if you find yourself, you are going to find yourself in a conflict. If it's not in the next couple of hours, you're going to find yourself in a conflict perhaps in the next couple of days. And it's not to say you didn't experience it because you avoided it. You're going to have a conflict situation. Find ways in which to get gifts from that situation and how you respond to it. So I want to leave you with a quote. Daniel Goleman is, really quite the father of emotional intelligence. And I picked this because I do want to validate the fact that anger is something that's completely necessary and is okay, and is an emotion that is part of a spectrum of emotions that we have as people. Anyone can become angry, that is easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way is possible. So if you want to avoid conflict, or you're someone who's sort of gun spirit, either way, let's find a balance. See the opportunities that conflict can give you as a leader. Find yourself in those spaces. Build a capability for yourself on your personal capacity in order to show up in a way that comes from a more self-aware and aware space through emotional intelligence in dealing with conflict. That really is my 2 cents for the day, guys. I think we have about 15 minutes. I don't know if you can take some time for questions, but please do connect with me, Vanessa Kodisang. And like I said, I am a Golden Key alumni. I've worked with graduates, for a long time in my career. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. If there's any way that I can share more knowledge or I can be of any assistance, I'm quite responsive on LinkedIn. So you can hop on there, but thank you for your time. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on your personal thoughts on conflict management.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was an outstanding presentation. I just want to go through the Q&A. We do have a few questions from the attendees. The first one is from Zanele Baloi. Zanele says, there is a saying that if you are neutral in times of a conflict, you have taken the side of the one causing harm to the other group. But would you suggest that if one wants to help de-escalate a conflict, you need to assume a neutral position? And if so, how do you do that, even when there is a natural tendency to want to side with one party of the conflict?
Who's that from, Obriel?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm saying, who is that from?
It's from Zanele. It's from Zanele.
Okay. Hi, Zanele. You sound like the eternal diplomat. So again, I know that because I'm in a relationship with someone who's very, very diplomatic, and wants to diffuse, wants to sort of be the mediator, etc. Look, obviously, that is something that is helpful when you're a manager. You have to come across as impartial. So if you're leading people and there's a conflict taking place, right? You don't want to ostracize any party. You don't want to sort of create that perception. What is effective really, again, is utilizing that situation to ventilate some of the issues or the feelings or the perceptions or the contexts or the individuals that are in that conversation. So when you are sort of wanting to distance yourself, it's difficult to be quite effective in a discussion like that, right? Or in that sort of situation. And so, yes, being balanced, being impartial is effective because you also don't get sort of emotionally embroiled in the conflict that is taking place. So when you're able to sort of separate yourself in that way, it is possible perhaps to be a lot more effective when you are dealing with the conflict situation and wanting to aid and to help. Because again, I may just like you a lot more, or I may sort of have a view that I agree with you, but coming into that conversation, when you have another party who has views and wants to share that, you do want to create a space which is safe for everyone to put their points across. And obviously, again, as a leader, you will sort of find what it is that we're trying to achieve here. You know, is there some elements that speak to strategic response? Is there an element that talks to sort of team dynamics? Is an element you can sort of filter for yourself as a leader around sort of what are some of the gems that I can pick up from this and what is actually happening in this conflict situation, and delve into that. So it's not an issue of taking sides. It really isn't. It's about what is the best outcome for the team. What is the best outcome for what you're trying to achieve? Taking the gift of what is coming from those people in aiding how to move forward. So I think, you know, everyone has a temperament. To just finish off this question, everyone has a temperament, and it's not to say, if I'm someone who's very comfortable with sort of being in the middle and someone else isn't, is anything wrong. The point is taking your temperament, but also making sure that you are utilizing healthy responses as opposed to wanting to avoid or wanting to aggress. But thank you so much for that. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant question. I think a valid one in which people would find themselves in trying to play sort of a balanced view, but not at the expense of really sort of surfacing what needs to be dealt with. I'll take another question if we have time.
All right, awesome. We have another one from Estienne, and he says, hi there, Estienne from George. Will we have access? He wants to know if you're going to make your presentation available.
It's my IP, Estienne. I'd be very happy. Oh, sorry, Natasha, did you want to say something?
I did want to let Etienne know that the recording of this session is actually going to be posted on the Golden Key Southern Africa YouTube channel, as well as the Golden Key Academy. So even though he won't have access directly to your presentation, he will have a recording of the session.
Thanks, Natasha. Okay. That was you saved me there. I appreciate it. Enjoy the content, Estienne.
All right, Zanele again. Today we have a lot of cancel culture. Do you think it's a reflection of poor conflict management skills, and how do we navigate such a culture?
Well, I'm too old for these concepts around cancel culture. You guys are ruthless. You youngins are ruthless. No, Look, Zanel, I think the point around emotional intelligence, so just imagine in a world where people really spend enough time building their emotional intelligence, if there would be anything like cancel culture, right? Because again, what emotional intelligence does, emotional intelligence is not just about leadership. Emotional intelligence is the ability to really show up in a very healthy way in your life. For yourself. And for me, emotional intelligence is really just being very, very aware and conscious. So when you have that ability, you don't find that other people being who they are is an affliction on yourself. You don't. You have enough understanding that there's differences in opinions. You have an appreciation for the fact that people are different and come from different perspectives. And so, because generally when people want to cancel people, I would imagine, and I hope my understanding is right, is that, you know, there is an aversion to what that person is and what views that they hold, what they've done, etc. And the thing is, in the real world, when you're working, when you guys are leading massive functions and leading teams, etc., you don't have the convenience of canceling people. You're going to have to deal with the person who has a very different style from you, who has very different opinions from you, who is going to show up very differently from you, who has a different agenda, who has different key performance indicators, right? The CFO is looking at other things to achieve that's very different from the HR executive, for example. So you don't have the luxury to just, you know, unfollow, block, ghost, cancel the person. You don't. And so that's why it's so important to build up this competence, because if you don't, you're really going to have a difficult time engaging and working collaboratively with people who you sort of naturally would not gravitate towards, for example. So you don't have that luxury in real life. You don't have that luxury. Think about your family. You can't sort of completely remove someone from your family. Similarly in the business world. So having that ability and learning that competence right now, I think will put you in good stead in the future when you are in organizations where there's 2,000 other people who have varied ways of being from you.
Brilliant. And then we have a question from Nozipo. Nozipo says, interns or new members of a team tend to be uncomfortable with conflict, thus avoiding raising issues early on until they've built rapport, but a lot can be lost in that time, just like in the junior pilot. How do you think HR can help with such individuals?
Nozipo, thank you for that question. Actually, that makes me think of my graduate is in my team. So let me use a real example. I'm in a team meeting, and you know, I'm chatting to my team, and I think, you know, it's the first team meeting with me. I'm the new manager, and obviously I think people want to impress, and people are, you know, are those who want to one up the other want to one up the other. Those who don't feel really comfortable just want this thing to disappear. And I had my graduate there, and I remember as the conversation's taking place, everyone's talking about what the graduate needs to do, what the graduate needs to do. You know, I'm waiting for this thing from the graduate, etc. And I looked towards him, and I could see sort of this angst, almost real irritation taking place in you know, in sort of how it's showing up in his body language. And I held him. I just took my hand and held him on the shoulder, and I said, look, I can tell that you're quite uncomfortable. Don't be overwhelmed right now. I think you can have a conversation with everyone else in the team around what are some of the deliverables that you need to do. I think perhaps there is a misalignment on there. And so there's a responsibility there on the leader's part to really sort of assist. After that, I had a conversation. I had a one-on-one with him. We took a walk. Pollard has beautiful grounds, and there's like wonderful space just to break away from the office. I took a walk and I sat with him, and I said, you know, I have a feeling that you were not comfortable, and let's talk about that. And through that conversation, I coached him around, you're yes, the most junior person in the team, but you have every right to discern. I worked in a consulting company where they encourage people to discern. They encourage everyone to say, even to a partner, I don't agree, I see this differently, you know? And so I wanted to encourage him to do that. But also I took steps to put in things in place where I reached out to the more senior members of the team to say, everyone must set up a one-on-one with this individual so that they can talk him through what the expectations are, as opposed to sort of landing them in a meeting. So there's the piece, about the leader having, again, the awareness of what is happening in the team, right? And so you're able to be so much more useful when you are really in touch. I'm not omnipresent. I'm not always there. I cannot always figure this stuff out. But there is a duty or an obligation for the leader to really try and help and guide more of the junior people in the team, because now also we're in a pandemic world, people, the graduates and interns aren't connecting, they're not getting the culture as they would before. So there's a heavier reliance on the team, the leader, to really sort of show up in a way in which that would help the graduate and intern. And if there is, I think, again, let's take ownership over what we need to develop. And if you are a graduate or intern, you feel like this is something that you're really struggling with, put up your hand, have a conversation with your manager or a mentor to help guide you on sort of what are some of the things that you could utilize that would help you gain sort of the confidence in spite of, you know, sort of your perceived position because you're junior. You have a very important voice. I always want to have young people in my team. I'm young myself. I've always been the youngest in my team. So your opinion, your position, your place matters fundamentally also.
Awesome. I don't think we do have any more questions from anyone. But yeah, I think this was lovely. Thank you so much for the session. We had a lot of engagement in the chat section. I'm not sure if you were following. The attendees were really impressed and they were really excited, and they loved your way of presentation as well. So from the Golden Key Mafikeng team, I just want to say thank you so much for saying yes to being part of this project that we are having. I think it's important that we normalize having a conversation about what true leadership entails and some of the elements as well that are associated with leadership. So thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much to the Golden Key Southern African team as well for organizing this. This was the 5th session of our day 2. We do have one last keynote speaker that is coming up. So please do tune in. And yeah, Vanessa, how do people connect with you? Do they connect with you via any social media platform? I know we can reach out to you via LinkedIn.
Yeah, leave my Instagram alone. Thank you very much. That's very private. But yes, again, on LinkedIn, do connect, guys. Like, again, if I can be of any assistance, whatever is in your mind. I am only one person. I have quite a number of followers, but I do try and connect as much as I possibly can. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see any of the conversations because I had a full screen. So that was really unfortunate, because I do like to sort of play on what is happening on the side. So I did feel like I was talking to myself a little bit, but that's okay. I can see from the feedback that you guys did find it useful, and I'm glad. And I just want to say to you, be kind to yourselves. You know, leadership is a journey, and being a person, being a human being is a journey. So be kind to yourselves. I think you're very, very fortunate to be exposed to this knowledge and these insights while you build your career, while you are, you know, sort of shaping also who you are. So, you know, all of us are valid, all emotions are valid, and all the best to you guys. I can't imagine doing my studies virtually. So all the best to you. I'm sending you lots of love, lots of light, and hope to see you in the corporate world soon. And thanks, Natasha, Juanita, Obriel, thanks for inviting me. It's been a good, I've had a good time. Thanks.
Thank you,
You're
Vanessa.
welcome.
We
Thanks,
enjoyed
Vanessa.
it so much.
And the
Absolutely.
office clip, Janita, I think we liked that.
I love that part. I'm going to remember this webinar forever.
Thanks, Natasha.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. This was very informative. I loved it. Thank you. I might just knock on your door again to say, hey, Golden Key might want you to do another webinar for us. So
Use and abuse me. Use and abuse me. Cheers, Natasha. Bye, Brielle.
thanks.
Cheers,
Bye.
All right, bye. Thanks, everyone.